When my son was 3, he fell from upstairs and died. My husband and his mother said it was because of my negligence. I was overwhelmed with regret and fell into despair every day. But on the evening of our divorce, I saw my husband holding my supposedly dead son and walking into the Civil Affairs Bureau with another woman. My mother-in-law had forgotten her keys and called me to open the door downstairs. I told her to ring the doorbell, but she said she didn't know how. I taught her, but she got angry, calling me lazy and unfilial, not even willing to take a few steps to open the door when there's an elevator. So I had to put my 3-year-old son Kimi on his small bed and hurried over. But just as I stepped out of the elevator, I heard the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Then came a woman's scream. When I opened the door, I saw my mother-in-law covering her face in horror. Then she went crazy and lunged at me, crying and screaming, "Jinx, worthless, give me back my grandson, give me back Kimi." That's when I noticed a pool of blood a dozen steps away. A small figure lay in it, wearing the clothes I bought for him. It was Kimi. My legs gave out, and I blacked out. When I woke up, my husband Morgan had already cremated our son. According to their hometown's customs, children who die young cannot stay overnight. I was unconscious for 2 whole days and nights, missing the last chance to see my son. I hit my head when I fainted, and the back of my head still hurts. But none of this pain compares to the pain in my heart. Crying, I grabbed Morgan. "Where's Kimi? You still have the nerve to ask. If it weren't for you, how could Kimi have fallen from upstairs?" Morgan's face turned pale with anger. He threw a photo at me. "Look at this. This is how our son died." He had taken a photo of Kimi lying in a pool of blood. Kimi had fallen head first, shattered, covered in blood, no longer looking human. I let out a wail, heartbroken beyond words. You're a housewife, staying home all day, and you can't even take care of your child. What use are you?" Morgan finished, then slapped me hard. I fell to the ground from the impact. I couldn't argue against my husband's accusations. How could I forgive myself for such a thing? Poor Kimi, he was only 3 years old. I fell into a serious illness and stayed in bed for a whole month. The house was filled with gloom. Since the accident, Morgan had not returned, and my mother-in-law seemed to wish she could tear me apart. My parents had opposed my marriage from the beginning. I insisted on marrying Morgan and moved abroad. Now, because of my negligence, I killed my son. I didn't dare contact them. I developed severe depression. 3 months after Morgan left, I asked him for a divorce. I was the one who broke this family, the one who killed my precious son. How could I still face this marriage? After the divorce, I sat in a snack shop opposite the Civil Affairs Bureau, unable to let go. I wasn't a careless person. How could I forget to close the railing of Kimi's crib that day? That evening, just as the Civil Affairs Bureau was about to close, through my drunken haze, I saw Morgan holding another woman, appearing at the entrance again. What shocked me more was that he held a delicate little boy in his arms. It was my supposedly dead Kimi. Was I drunk? I pinched myself hard. It hurt, and my vision was clear. Looking back at the Civil Affairs Bureau, Morgan and the woman had already gone inside. It wasn't an illusion. I rushed into the bureau, and indeed saw them applying for a marriage certificate. Seeing me, Morgan seemed startled and quickly stood up with the child in his arms. I rushed over and saw that the child wore our family's heirloom jade pendant around his neck. It was a birthday gift from my mother to Kimi. It was custom made. There couldn't be another one like it. This was Kimi. I rushed madly, tripped in my excitement, and Morgan handed Kimi to the woman and blocked me. I cried, grabbing his hand. "Was the child you were holding just now my Kimi? Susan, are you crazy? Have you forgotten? Kimi is dead because of you," I screamed. "I can't be mistaken, that's my son." Morgan was silent for a moment, then softened his tone. "Have you been taking your medication on time?" I was stunned. He sighed. "I'm sad about Kimi too, but you need to take care of yourself." The woman behind him was about to leave with Kimi. I tried to stop her, but Morgan blocked me. "Susan, that's someone else's child. Kimi is dead. He fell from upstairs because of your negligence. Wake up, okay? Did Kimi really die? I don't believe it. How could a mother not recognize her own child? Besides, I suddenly remembered that Kimi fell face first that day. That means I didn't see his face. I wasn't there when he was cremated. I was unconscious, so I couldn't confirm what was cremated. Most importantly, even if I didn't remember if I closed the crib railing, how did Kimi climb up to the high window on the balcony? I had been overwhelmed by grief before. Thinking carefully now, Kimi's death was full of holes. There was a good chance my Kimi was still alive. I watched Morgan leave and wiped my tears, deciding to find out the truth. I had been a housewife for many years, taking care of the family with almost no friends. I was out of touch with society, unable to find anyone to help me investigate. I had to use the simplest method, hiding near Morgan's company and waiting. I didn't dare to follow too closely, afraid of being discovered. It took about a week of following him on and off before I found out Morgan's current address, Golden Garden. This is the most expensive villa district in our city, bar none. Back when it first opened, Morgan and I had gone to check it out. We were satisfied with everything about the house, but we stopped short because of the price. Morgan ran his own company and had earned quite a bit over the years. I trusted him so much that after helping get his company on the right track, I devoted myself to our family and didn't pay much attention to his finances. I couldn't believe that just a few months after our divorce, Morgan could already afford a house in Golden Garden. Clearly, he always thought of me as a fool. I immediately got a job there as a temporary worker, responsible for cleaning the neighborhood. After chatting with the other cleaning ladies, I discovered a chilling truth. Morgan has been living there for a while, even before our divorce, with his secretary Lisa. The cleaning lady in charge of his unit even said they frequently go to the hospital for checkups. Based on her daughter-in-law's experience with preparing for pregnancy, she guessed they were checking their fertility. When I heard this, my mind buzzed, and everything suddenly made sense. I had a child, so it definitely wasn't Morgan who was infertile. It was that woman. She couldn't have children, so Morgan and his mother-in-law staged Kimi's fall to trick me out of my child. I was the wife who built everything with him from scratch, and now I've become a surrogate for his secretary. I won't take this lying down. I have to get Kimi back and take revenge on them. I prepared a spring knife in advance. Wearing a mask and a cleaning uniform, I followed Morgan after work, wrapping myself up so he wouldn't recognize me. In the elevator, I kept my hat low, wore a large mask, and let my thick bangs cover almost my entire face. Morgan glanced at me disdainfully. He didn't recognize me. When we got out of the elevator, we ran into Lisa, who was about to go downstairs. She respectfully said to Morgan, "Boss, I found a hospital for your son." "Good, well done. You've been working hard lately." "It's my pleasure to help you," Lisa replied, looking at him admiringly. Morgan patted her on the shoulder. "I can't visit often, so take good care of him. You won't be shortchanged." "Okay," Lisa giggled sweetly. Their conversation puzzled me. It didn't look like they were lovers. Even though Lisa had a thing for Morgan, he clearly didn't treat her like a partner. Could it be that this secretary was only hired to take care of the child? Maybe the rumors about fertility were just gossip from the cleaning ladies. So, is Kimi still alive? Who was the woman with Morgan at the Civil Affairs Bureau that day? My mind was in a mess. I didn't realize Morgan had already left until I found myself riding the elevator down with Lisa. At that moment, I got a call from Sophia. Sophia and I are similar. We both helped our husbands start their businesses and then became full-time housewives. But her marriage was always loving, and she knew more about her husband's affairs. Back when Morgan and Tom were starting their businesses, we often helped them out. I even gave Tom a lot of resources. But later, as I shifted my focus to my family, I lost touch with them. I never expected them to contact me first. When I answered the call, Mrs. Sophia asked worriedly, "How's your illness?" I was taken aback. "What illness?" "Hysteria. Morgan said you were paranoid about him cheating and obsessed with catching him." And then what? I thought she'd ask about Kimi, but she acted like she didn't know Kimi was dead and continued, "You should get out more. Your family is rich enough. Why not hire a nanny? Don't stay cooped up at home like an old maid. You'll get moldy." She suggested hiring a nanny. She didn't know Kimi had died. I paused and then asked her, "Do you think Morgan is seeing someone else? Why are you asking this suddenly?" Mrs. Sophia laughed awkwardly. "Oh, come on now. Men, as their business grows, they meet more people. Sometimes flirtation is inevitable, but you are always Mrs. Morgan. That won't change." So, she didn't even know we were divorced. Morgan hadn't made our divorce public. In the months I was heartbroken over my child's death, he was out there still using my name to do business. Going along with Mrs. Sophia, I said, "Really, have I been too strict with him?" She comforted me, "Actually, it's not that bad. It's just that if you're always at home, you'll only have him to focus on. You need to get out more." I sighed. Maybe I don't trust him enough. "Could you help me get his travel schedule for the past 6 months? I think all my worrying is because I don't feel secure." Mrs. Sophia agreed readily. She repeatedly told me she could help look into it, but that I must not let Morgan know. I readily agreed. Soon, she sent me Morgan's schedule. He goes to Golden Garden every day. Other than that, he's mostly focused on work, with no suspicious women around. But he always travels with the same woman, Jenny. Strangely, their flights and hotels are booked separately, so it looks like they're traveling alone and just coincidentally meeting. This way, a simple check on Morgan wouldn't reveal anything. Mrs. Sophia said that if she hadn't been meticulous and noticed the same name next to his on 2 flights, she'd still be at a loss. But she quickly comforted me, saying, "These sneaky affairs mean nothing. They won't shake your position as Mrs. Morgan." I didn't answer her, because this Jenny wasn't just anybody. She was Morgan's first love. I held back my emotions and followed the clues Mrs. Sophia gave me, leading to even more shocking discoveries. It turns out Jenny returned to the country a few years ago, right around the time Morgan and I got married. She didn't come back alone. She brought a child with her. As soon as she returned, she took the child to the best children's hospital in the country. For the next few years, mother and child were regulars at the hospital. Morgan had also transferred a lot of money to Jenny using the company account, all for the child's treatment. He even bought a house in Golden Garden under Jenny's name. That's joint marital property. Morgan had some nerve. The child in the photos looked about 70 to 80% like Morgan. No one would doubt they were related. And judging by his age, he's obviously older than Kimi. In other words, Morgan had this child before he married me and later had Kimi. But when Morgan courted me, he said explicitly that he loved only me. He lied to me. Did Jenny know about all this? To further clarify the truth, I dug into the hospital records where this child was treated. His name is Leo. Leo, the continuation of Jenny and Morgan. Ridiculous. What does that make me? What does that make Kimi? I felt like a joke at that moment, with everyone laughing at my stupidity. Holding back my anger and heartache, I reached the hospital room's door. Just then, I saw Morgan's secretary leading Kimi in. Kimi seemed a bit dazed, not like his usually lively self, as if his mind was empty. The secretary was kicked out by Morgan as soon as she entered. So, it seems she has nothing to do with Morgan. Moments later, Jenny arrived, crying and talking on her phone. Can't you think of another way? How is he too young? He's already 3. Didn't you have him in the first place to treat Leo's heart? My heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? Morgan had Kimi to provide a heart for his and Jenny's child. Jenny reached the room's door. She stopped calling and rushed inside to hug Morgan, crying, "Morgan, how can you do this? You said your heart was only for me and Leo. You owe me this. If it weren't for her, how could we have been forced apart for so long? We truly love each other. It's because of her that I had to become this hidden figure. She's almost gone mad now. There's no use keeping the child. It's better to give his heart to our Leo. At worst, we can give her a grave. Is that not enough?" The truth hit me out of the blue. I was so shocked I couldn't breathe. So they had set up this trap for me to think my son was already dead. That way, Morgan could take Kimi's heart to save his illegitimate child. They faked Kimi's death and blamed it on me. Rage coursed through me. I wanted to storm into the room and tear that despicable couple apart. At that moment, the elevator doors behind me opened. It was the bodyguards Morgan arranged. One pushed me aside, shouting, "Get out of the way." In an instant, I calmed down. Since marrying Morgan, I had given him everything. Now I had almost no means to fight him. For Kimi's sake, I absolutely couldn't act rashly. I watched helplessly as they took Kimi away, my palms digging into my flesh, tasting blood in my throat. But for my child, I had to endure. I immediately sought out Morgan's competitor, Chloe. After hearing my story, she couldn't help but clap her hands. Such a twist. What kind of radioactive waste could spawn such a heartless carbon-based life form as Morgan? I wasn't in the mood for her rant. I asked her, "Do you have any way to delay Kimi's surgery?" She smiled at me, "Of course, but what do I get out of helping you?" I promised Chloe I would help destroy Morgan's company and let her take all his market share. She was pleased and sent me a nurse's secretly recorded surveillance video the next day. To get Kimi to cooperate, Morgan was secretly drugging him. Being so young, Kimi was still attached to me, often crying and throwing tantrums. But to keep him quiet, Morgan drugged him to make him drowsy and confused. No wonder Kimi seemed so out of it last time I saw him. I was furious, biting down hard. Kimi is so young. Isn't Morgan afraid this will damage Kimi's heart, jeopardizing the transplant for his illegitimate child? Of course, he is. That's why he chose drugs that only harm the brain and not the heart. I was fuming with rage, wishing I could fly over and kill that wretched couple. Is Leo's child a child and mine nothing? Chloe continued, "Don't worry, I've already swapped out the drugs. The hospital director happens to be my classmate, and we'll take good care of Kimi. But you, when will you fulfill your promise? No time like the present. Let's do it today." I immediately called my parents overseas. To my surprise, they didn't curse after hearing my tale. My dad just sighed and said, At least now you know what kind of person he is. My mom added, it's not too late to turn back now. I explained my plan to them, and they were supportive. My mom arranged for a distant cousin to come over and pose as my live-in nanny. Then, I sent submissions to major media and platforms, describing everything I had been through in detail as the live-in nanny. The moment the news broke, it quickly topped the trending charts. Morgan's reputation was ruined and he lost a bunch of partnerships. He furiously posted to clear things up, but it made no difference. He tried to squash my story, but Chloe was ready. Every time Morgan pulled one down, Chloe bought another spot. My story of being tricked into marriage, having a kid, and being driven insane spread far and wide. The situation blew up even to Morgan's most important client. The client called my distant cousin to ask, is everything you said true? I didn't respond. I had her accidentally send that recording to Morgan. Morgan called back quickly. Susan, what's that nanny of yours talking about? When did I ever trick you into marriage and having a kid? He was practically shouting in panic. I pretended to be weak. Honey, when are you coming home? I miss our son. I dreamed of Kimi. He hasn't left. He's still in our house. Can you come back and help me find him? With me acting like a lunatic, Morgan was getting nowhere. Furious, he hung up. He reached out to a bunch of friends and connections, but no one could help him. With a scandal like this, you can't just PR your way out unless the original poster retracts it. My place was surrounded by self-media folks trying to ride the wave. Morgan had no choice but to sneak back home late at night. He came with a bunch of groceries, all my favorite foods, including 3 or 4 durians. Susan, how are you? I came to check on you. He had dark circles under his eyes, clearly stressed out. Funny, he used to just call me by my name, now he's all lovey-dovey, acting like we're close. A quick smirk flashed in my eyes, still putting on that weak act. Have you seen our son? Has Kimi come by? I miss him so much. Help me find him. Morgan's expression darkened. Kimi is gone. You shouldn't be too sad. You're still young. You'll have more kids. Hearing this, I wanted to stab him in the heart. What a great father to Kimi. He sacrificed my child for his first love son. Did he forget? When Kimi was born, he held, kissed, and doted on him too. I held back my tears of anger, turned around, and asked, Morgan, do you really believe Kimi is gone? If he is, why aren't you sad? My voice trembled, filled with hate. Morgan, answer me. Do you think you deserve to be a father? Morgan was speechless. After a long while, he spoke. I'm not blaming you for what happened to Kimi. You need to move on. We've been married for years. I want to see you get better. He took out a check. Your situation is really causing me trouble. Help me out. Let's make a video to clarify things. If you do this for me, this $1 million is yours. I really need that project contract. Disgusted, I turned around and slapped him twice, hard. Morgan's cheeks swelled, blood at the corner of his mouth. Enraged, he nearly hit back, but I went berserk. Clarify. Why clarify? I won't. I want Kimi. Give me back Kimi. Realizing I had him by the throat with my story, he knelt in front of me. Susan, we've been married. Please help me. I looked coldly at him, like he was already dead. After a long while, I told him, my condition isn't better. Give it a few days. I'll let you know. From then on, Morgan started coming home a lot more. Sometimes I didn't open the door. He'd leave gifts at the entrance. Slowly, half a month passed, and he was frantic. He had put almost all his company's funds into that project. If he couldn't close the deal, bankruptcy was his only option. With his company on the line, Kimi's tests at the hospital weren't meeting the criteria for organ donation, and Jenny was fighting with him every day at the hospital. They even came to blows. Chloe told me all this and showed me a video. Watching those two, once so in love, now fighting, made me laugh. The time was right. I arranged to meet Morgan. I put pale makeup on to look worse. I told him that as his wife for so many years, I shouldn't be too harsh. I said I'd taken care of the trending videos, but I couldn't help with the lost partnerships. Morgan was pleased. Arrogantly, he threw a $1 million check at my face. But he didn't know my real revenge had just begun. I had my cousin delete the original video, but since the trending topic stayed hot for so long, the screen recordings spread everywhere. Morgan kept trying to pull the trending topic down, while Chloe kept buying spots. The difference was, Morgan's partnerships dwindled, and funds to manage his reputation were stretched thin. Chloe, however, gained more partnerships, making her able to buy trending spots easily. Morgan called again, demanding a clarification. I asked, how can I clear up the truth? I didn't post the video. Besides, Everything in the video is true. He hung up angrily, and within 5 minutes, Chloe called. I asked, that Morgan? Of course, we're old rivals. He immediately knew it was me buying the spots. And then, how did it go? I worried Chloe might relent, but she was greedier than I thought. She didn't answer directly, only saying, we didn't reach an agreement. So he got a big shot to mediate a dinner tonight. Do you think his date will be you? With a dinner scheduled, I'd usually be the one to go, but we were divorced now. No, I answered immediately. Oh, Chloe chuckled. The next morning, Chloe asked me to go to the hospital to pick up Kimi. She said, no need to wait anymore. No one else will need Kimi's heart. When I arrived, Morgan and Jenny were arguing. They were hiding in the corner of the hallway, right by an open window, speaking in very low voices. Jenny was furious. Are you crazy? He wants me to sleep with him. Are you even a man? Someone openly makes a move on your girlfriend, and you don't even react. I then realized that it was her first time accompanying Morgan to a social event yesterday, likely dressed to the nines. Chloe asked if my partner would be me. Probably, because she knew in advance that the big shot hosting likes women. Morgan's business was at stake, so certainly, he would compromise. Which meant, Jenny had no choice but to submit herself. Morgan's face indeed grew darker. I told you not to go, but you insisted. Now that he likes you, you blame me. And if it weren't to get a heart transplant for your son, would I have ended up like this? As soon as he finished, Jenny started crying. How can you blame me? It's clearly your ex-wife's fault. She shouldn't have exposed it. What a shameless thing to say. Doing it and not owning up. I was so angry, I wanted to rush out and scold them, but then heard Morgan say, no matter what you think, here's the hotel address and room number. Be there at 8 tonight. Jenny cried hysterically. Morgan, you're a piece of shit. Jenny, think more about the kid. If I fail to secure this project, the company is finished. There won't be money to take care of you and Leo, or to treat Leo. I've sacrificed my own son for you. Can't you sacrifice a little for me? I had to admit, Morgan was good at coaxing women. Under his sweet talk, Jenny finally compromised. I texted Chloe, is this the end of it? Chloe asked, how did they decide? I said, they probably chose to swallow their pride. Chloe seemed very happy, sending me a singing emoji. Then she said, swallowing their pride, huh, that's great. Morgan's company is totally finished. Morgan and Jenny left, and I went to Kimi's hospital room to see him. I walked over cautiously, looking at the chubby little guy sitting in the chair, and tears blurred my eyes. Kimi. This time, he heard my voice and suddenly turned around. Mommy. He jumped off the chair and ran towards me, and I squatted down to hug him tightly. Mommy, where did you go? Kimi missed you so much. I couldn't stop crying, choked with joy. Mommy missed you too. Then I noticed an elderly woman with a kind face sitting in the room. I thought she was a caregiver, but Chloe was standing behind her. The elderly lady asked me, do you want to get compensation from Morgan? I shook my head. More than compensation, I wanted him to lose everything. I could figure out making money later, but the chance to see Morgan utterly ruined was rare. As Kimi's mother, I took Kimi away. Chloe replaced his medication, and he was lively every day. Morgan didn't even notice the switch. Chloe told me, they just didn't want to take care of Kimi. Having someone to play with him was enough. As long as Kimi didn't cry, Morgan and his people wouldn't come around. It turned out Morgan hadn't gone to see Kimi once since his medication was changed. Jenny still ended up sleeping with someone for Morgan. Chloe purposely parked the car outside the hotel. The three of us, me, Chloe, and Kimi, watched wide-eyed as Jenny walked out of the hotel. She looked devastated, disheveled, her hair messy. Funny thing was, Morgan actually came to pick her up. Jenny was so humiliated, she started hitting and kicking Morgan in the street. He didn't dare fight back. Then Morgan made a phone call, furiously shouting, breaking down right on the street. It seemed Jenny asked him something, and then she too went mad on the street. Chloe started the car. I didn't see the rest. I asked Chloe, you said earlier, Morgan's company is totally finished. What did you mean? Chloe asked me, remember the elderly woman in the hospital room? She's the real big shot. She said the woman was a socialite when she was young, married a poor student, and built a company from scratch together. Then, the man fooled around outside and indirectly caused the death of one of her children. Later, the man died suddenly. The woman took control of the company herself. That man who appeared at the dinner that day was actually her son. We help you because we are all women. No decent woman would miss the chance to crush a scumbag. Chloe was cheerfully driving, and from behind us, Morgan and Jenny's heartbreaking cries occasionally reached us. Epilogue. I later found out that after Jenny slept with someone, the big shot did not keep his promise. Morgan went bankrupt, Jenny left the kid at the hospital and went abroad alone. Morgan abandoned that child. When I saw him again, he was barely surviving on a hospital bed. He reminisced about our sweet relationship and how he was a good dad when Kimi was born. I asked, "Are you saying these to win me back?" He didn't answer, pulling out his emaciated hand from under the blanket and gave me something. "It was our wedding gift," he said. "Melt it down. I'll chip in more money to make Kimi a little gold locket. I know you won't take care of me anymore. Our marriage is over, but at least my bond with my kid remains." I took the gold and told him, "I'll take these to Leo's grave." A week later, when I was picking Kimi up from kindergarten, I saw Morgan's name trending locally. The former well-known entrepreneur of the city, Morgan, jumped to his death last night at 11. Just then, Kimi came bouncing towards me. "Mommy, you came to pick me up. Sweet baby." I held him tightly, like hugging a small son.